I stared at my phone screen in complete disbelief, the blue glow illuminating my face in the darkness of my apartment. 11:47 p.m. The text from Mom hit like a sledgehammer to the chest. "You're not coming. Jack's girlfriend Amber needs your cabin. She's pregnant and needs the bigger room. Jack will reimburse you later." My hands trembled as I read it again, hoping the words would somehow rearrange themselves into something that made sense. Around me, my suitcases stood packed and ready by the front door, boarding passes printed and tucked into my travel folder. This Caribbean cruise was supposed to be my celebration, my reward for finally making senior architect at Morrison & Associates after 6 grueling years. Instead, I was being kicked off a vacation I had planned and paid for entirely just hours before departure. My finger hovered over Mom's contact, but when I called it went straight to voicemail. She had turned off her phone, probably anticipating my reaction. I sat on my couch, surrounded by the evidence of months of careful planning, trying to process what had just happened. 8 months ago, I had invited my entire family to join me on this cruise to celebrate my promotion. The bonus from Morrison & Associates was substantial, and I wanted to share my success with the people who mattered most. I spent weeks researching the perfect Caribbean route, finally settling on the Norwegian Gems 7-day Western Caribbean itinerary. 4 premium balcony cabins on deck 10 each, with ocean views and private balconies. I booked adjoining rooms for Mom and Dad, a separate cabin for Jack, and kept the corner suite for myself. The total came to $8,400. I paid everything up front without hesitation, using my bonus money to cover not just the cabins, but specialty dining packages at Cagney's Steakhouse, and Le Bistro shore excursions in Cozumel and Jamaica, and even spa treatments for Mom at the Mandara Spa. The family seemed genuinely grateful and excited. Dad called it the most generous thing anyone had ever done for the family. Mom cried happy tears, saying she had never stayed in such a nice cabin before. But now, replaying the last few months in my mind, I began to see warning signs I had ignored. Jack's increasing demands for upgrades to his cabin. Mom consistently taking Jack's side whenever we disagreed about trip details. Subtle comments about me being selfish with my career success, as if my hard work somehow took away from the family rather than benefiting everyone. The pieces were connecting in ways that made my stomach turn. Jack had been manipulating Mom for months, slowly poisoning her against me while positioning himself as the devoted son who really needed family support. I pulled out my laptop and opened Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat, searching for clues I might have missed. What I found made my blood run cold. Amber's Instagram was filled with posts about amazing cruise plans dating back 3 weeks. Photos of cruise outfits she had purchased, screenshots of spa appointments she had booked, even stories about friends coming to see her off at the port. She had known she was taking my cabin for weeks, possibly months. I scrolled through Jack's social media next, looking for any mention of the trip. His posts were more subtle but telling. 2 weeks ago, big things coming up. Sometimes you have to take what you deserve. 1 week ago, family dynamics are about to change. Time for the responsible one to step aside. My hands were shaking as I screenshotted everything. But the final blow came when I checked my airline confirmations. I had booked everyone's flights using my travel rewards account, and the email history showed something that shattered the last of my naive trust. Jack had airline tickets issued in his name 3 days ago, with Amber listed as his companion. He had been planning to bring her all along, knowing full well that I would be kicked off to make room for her. The pregnancy claim that Mom mentioned in her text seemed increasingly suspicious. I scrolled back through Amber's recent posts and found photos from just yesterday showing her at a wine tasting event, clearly drinking alcohol. Either she was lying about being pregnant, or she was being incredibly reckless with the pregnancy. Given everything else I was discovering, the lie seemed more likely. I set my phone down and looked around my apartment. My travel documents were organized in neat folders. My clothes were carefully packed in coordinated outfits. I had even bought new swim trunks and gotten a haircut yesterday, wanting to look my best for what was supposed to be a celebration of my achievements. Instead, I was sitting alone in the dark, realizing that my own brother had orchestrated an elaborate scheme to steal my vacation while manipulating our mother into delivering the crushing blow. The cruise was supposed to help me heal from my devastating breakup with Sarah 3 months ago. Instead, it was becoming another source of betrayal and pain. Sleep was impossible. I spent the entire night digging deeper, and what I discovered made Jack's betrayal look even more calculated and cruel than I had initially realized. I started with phone records, something I had access to since I managed the family plan as a cost-saving measure for everyone. The data was damning. In the past month alone, Mom had received 47 calls from Jack, compared to only 3 calls from me. But that wasn't the most disturbing part. The call logs showed a pattern of Jack reaching out to Mom immediately after I had tried to contact her about trip details, almost as if he was monitoring our communication and providing counter-narratives to whatever I was sharing. Next, I accessed my online banking and credit card statements, something I should have done weeks ago. My heart sank as I scrolled through charges I didn't remember making. Jack had somehow gained access to my booking confirmation numbers and had been adding extras to the reservation. An additional $2,300 in unauthorized charges appeared over the past 6 weeks. Premium beverage packages for 2 people, couples massage packages at the spa, specialty restaurant reservations that required credit card guarantees, even shore excursions I had never heard of, including a private beach cabana rental in Jamaica for $350 and a couple's snorkeling adventure in Cozumel for $225. Jack had essentially been planning a romantic getaway for himself and Amber using my money, all while pretending to be grateful for my generosity. But the most devastating discovery was yet to come. Buried in my email trash folder, I found messages that I didn't remember deleting. As I read through them, a horrifying picture emerged. Jack had been intercepting family communications about the trip, deleting my emails to Mom and Dad, and replacing them with messages that made him look like the responsible organizer and me like a disorganized, difficult person. One email chain showed me trying to coordinate dinner reservations for the family at Le Bistro, asking everyone for their preferred dates and times. My original message was gone, but Jack's response to the family made it look like I was being demanding and inflexible about restaurant choices. Another thread showed me sharing exciting details about the ship's amenities and our shore excursion options. Again, my original message was deleted, and Jack's response criticized me for overwhelming everyone with unnecessary details. I realized that Jack had been systematically isolating me from family communications while positioning himself as the voice of reason. Mom and Dad had been receiving a completely distorted version of my involvement in the trip, making me look selfish and controlling, while Jack appeared considerate and accommodating. The technology aspect of his manipulation was sophisticated. Jack worked in IT support, and he had clearly used his skills to gain access to my email accounts and family communications. I found evidence that he had been forwarding my emails to himself, then deleting the originals and crafting responses that served his narrative. But perhaps most chilling was what I discovered in his browser history, which I could access through our shared family computer backup system. Jack had been researching manipulation tactics for months, bookmarked articles about dealing with narcissistic family members, how to expose someone's true nature, and protecting family from financial abuse. He had been studying psychological manipulation techniques and applying them systematically to turn my own family against me. I found forum posts under what was clearly Jack's username seeking advice on taking over someone else's vacation plans and dealing with a controlling brother who holds money over everyone's head. The responses he received were largely critical, with other users calling his behavior manipulative and suggesting he plan his own vacation instead of hijacking someone else's. But Jack had persisted, refining his approach based on the feedback. Most disturbing of all was a saved document on his computer titled Byron Notes. It contained detailed observations about my personality, my reactions to different situations and strategies for managing me. One section read, Byron's weakness is his need to be seen as generous and responsible. He will sacrifice his own happiness to avoid family conflict. Key strategy: frame any opposition to our plans as Byron being selfish. Mom will always choose the son who seems more grateful. The document included a timeline for getting me removed from the cruise, with specific milestones and backup plans. Jack had been planning this betrayal for months, studying my psychology like a predator studies prey. He knew exactly which buttons to push with Mom, and he had pushed them systematically and ruthlessly. As dawn broke outside my apartment window, I sat surrounded by printed emails, screenshots, and bank statements. The evidence was overwhelming. This wasn't a simple family misunderstanding or a last-minute change of plans. It was a calculated, premeditated campaign to steal my vacation while destroying my relationships with my parents in the process. Jack had used my own generosity against me, turning my gift to the family into a weapon to hurt me. He had manipulated Mom into delivering the crushing blow, ensuring that the betrayal would be as painful as possible. And he had done it all while positioning himself as the victim of my supposed selfishness and control. But Jack had made one crucial mistake. In his arrogance and certainty that I would simply accept this treatment, he had underestimated my ability to uncover the truth. And now that I knew the full extent of his deception, I was going to make sure there were consequences for his actions. At 6 a.m. sharp, I called Norwegian Cruise Line's customer service number. After a brief hold, I was connected with Maria, a representative who had clearly been dealing with cruise emergencies all morning. Good morning, this is Maria with Norwegian Guest Services. How can I assist you today? I identified myself and explained that I needed to understand my options regarding a booking I had made for 4 cabins. Maria pulled up my reservation and immediately expressed concern. Mr. Byron, I see some notes on your account that are quite troubling. Someone called yesterday attempting to transfer your booking authorization to a Jack Thompson, claiming you were mentally unstable and might cancel everything out of spite. We flagged the account for potential fraud because the caller couldn't provide proper verification. My blood ran cold. Jack hadn't just planned to kick me off the cruise. He had tried to steal control of the entire booking to prevent me from taking any action to protect myself. Maria continued, the caller claimed to be your brother and said you were having a psychological breakdown related to a recent relationship ending. He requested that we transfer primary booking authority to him to protect the family's vacation from your emotional instability. When we asked for proper documentation and verification, he became hostile and demanded to speak with a supervisor. Hey, what kind of documentation would he have needed? I asked, already knowing Jack didn't have access to the required information. We would need notarized power of attorney documents, medical certification of incapacity, or a court order. He had none of these. The call was so concerning that we added security notes to your account. I'm glad you called personally. Maria then explained something that gave me hope for the first time since receiving Mom's text. As the primary booker and credit card holder, I had complete control over all reservations. More importantly, due to my platinum membership status earned through years of business travel, I could cancel the entire group booking up to 24 hours before departure with minimal penalties. All 4 cabins, dining packages, excursions, and add-ons can be canceled, Maria confirmed. Your platinum status means you would only forfeit the small booking deposit fees, roughly $1,500 total. Everything else would be refunded to your credit card within 5 business days. I asked Maria to hold while I processed this information. Jack's plan was more sophisticated than I had initially realized. After getting me removed from the cruise, he intended to contact the cruise line claiming a family emergency and requesting compassionate rate reductions on the remaining bookings. Maria confirmed that such requests were common, though usually legitimate. Did this person mention anything about rate reductions or financial hardship? I asked. Actually, yes. He indicated that if you canceled out of spite, the family would be left with financial hardship and would need assistance with booking costs. He was already laying groundwork for a hardship claim. I realized Jack had been researching travel insurance loopholes and planned to file false claims about my mental health crisis to avoid paying full rates for the vacation he was stealing. He had studied the system and found ways to manipulate it at every level. But Maria revealed something else that made my decision easy. Jack's aggressive call had been recorded and flagged by Norwegian's fraud prevention team. Any future attempts by Jack to book with Norwegian would trigger additional verification requirements. His behavior had already marked him as a potential problem customer. Mr. Byron, I have to ask, Maria said gently, are you being financially abused by family members? We see this occasionally, and we have resources to help. The question hit me like a physical blow. I had been so focused on the betrayal and manipulation that I hadn't considered the broader pattern. Jack had been systematically exploiting my generosity and using my resources for his own benefit, while undermining my relationships with family. It was a form of financial abuse, something I had never imagined could happen within my own family. I think I might be, I admitted quietly. Maria transferred me to Norwegian's guest advocate team specialists, trained to handle situations involving family conflicts and financial abuse. The advocate David listened to my story with patience and professionalism. What you're describing is unfortunately not uncommon, David said. Family members sometimes exploit the generosity of relatives who have achieved financial success. The pattern you describe, manipulation, isolation, and systematic exploitation, are classic indicators. David explained that I had several options. I could proceed with the cruise alone, using one cabin and canceling the others. I could postpone the entire trip for up to 1 year with no penalties due to the documented fraud attempts. Or I could cancel everything and take a future cruise credit for the full amount. But David also presented a fourth option that I hadn't considered. Given the documented fraud attempts and the security flags on your account, if you cancel this booking, it would trigger an automatic review of any future bookings made by the individuals involved. They would be flagged in our system as potential fraud risks. This meant that if Jack tried to book any cruise with Norwegian in the future, he would face additional verification requirements and potential denial of service. His actions had consequences beyond just this one booking. As I contemplated my options, David shared something that solidified my resolve. Mr. Byron, I've been doing this for 12 years, and I've seen situations like yours too many times. The kindest thing you can do for yourself and your family is to enforce boundaries. Enabling this behavior only makes it worse. I asked David to give me 30 minutes to make my decision. I had all the information I needed, and I had a choice to make. I could continue being the family doormat who absorbed abuse in the name of keeping peace, or I could stand up for myself and let everyone face the consequences of their actions. Jack had been researching how to steal my vacation, but he had forgotten one crucial detail. I was the one with the actual power in this situation, and I was about to use it. At 7 a.m., I called David back with my decision. I want to cancel everything. Are you certain, Mr. Byron? This will affect all 4 cabins and every add-on package? I'm completely certain. Cancel it all. David processed the cancellations with professional efficiency. 4 balcony cabins canceled. Specialty dining packages canceled. Shore excursions canceled. Spa treatments canceled. Premium beverage packages canceled. Every single addition that Jack had secretly added to my booking. Canceled. Your refund total comes to $6,890, David confirmed. The $1,510 in penalties covers the immediate cancellation fees, Your credit card should see the refund within 3 business days. But I wasn't finished. David connected me with Norwegian's fraud prevention team, where I filed a formal complaint about Jack's attempt to steal my booking authorization. The representative Angela took detailed notes about Jack's false claims regarding my mental health and his unauthorized attempts to access my reservation. This type of behavior can result in a permanent ban from Norwegian Cruise Line, Angela explained. We take fraud attempts very seriously, especially those involving false claims about mental health emergencies. Next, I contacted American Airlines. I had booked everyone's flights using my frequent flyer account and travel rewards points. When I explained the situation to the customer service representative, I discovered something shocking. Jack had been calling the airline repeatedly over the past week, trying to transfer my frequent flyer miles to his account. Sir, we have multiple recorded calls from someone claiming to be your authorized representative, the airline representative explained. He was attempting to transfer miles and change booking authorizations. We denied all requests due to lack of proper verification. I immediately reported this as identity theft. The airline's fraud department opened an investigation which automatically flagged Jack's identification for suspicious activity. Any future flight bookings in Jack's name would require additional verification and documentation. But the airline representative had more disturbing news. The caller also attempted to book additional flights to the same destination using your miles, claiming he was planning a surprise for you. When we refused, he became verbally abusive toward our staff. I requested copies of all recorded calls involving attempts to access my account. The airline agreed to provide them as part of the fraud investigation. Jack's voice would be captured on these recordings, providing evidence of his attempts to steal from me. With the cruise and flights handled, I moved on to the other reservations Jack had made using my information. I started with the rental car company. Jack had booked a luxury SUV for the family's use during shore excursions using my credit card and rewards membership without authorization. When I canceled the rental car reservation, the company's system flagged unusual activity. The customer service representative explained that someone had called 3 days ago requesting upgrades to the vehicle, adding expensive insurance packages and additional equipment rentals. The caller claimed to be you, but he couldn't verify the security questions correctly, the representative said. We made notes on the account about the suspicious activity. I canceled the entire rental car reservation and filed a fraud report. Like with the airline and cruise line, this would flag Jack's identification for future verification requirements. Next, I contacted the various restaurants and tour companies where Jack had made reservations using my name and credit card. One by one, I canceled everything. A private beach cabana in Jamaica. Canceled. Couples snorkeling adventure in Cozumel. Canceled. Romantic dinner reservations at an exclusive restaurant in Costa Maya. Canceled. Each cancellation triggered red flags in Jack's profile across the travel industry. Companies shared fraud information, and Jack's name was being added to multiple watch lists for suspicious activity. But I saved the most important call for last. I contacted my bank and credit card companies reporting unauthorized charges and requesting fraud investigations. This was where Jack's scheme would really unravel. The bank representative Michael reviewed my account activity with growing concern. Mr. Byron, I see patterns here that suggest systematic financial abuse. These aren't random fraudulent charges. They show planning and intimate knowledge of your personal information. Michael explained that the unauthorized charges totaling over $2,000 constituted credit card fraud. More seriously, Jack's use of my personal information to make bookings and access accounts constituted identity theft, a felony in most states. We're going to freeze any accounts where this individual has access, Michael said. If he's a co-signer or authorized user on any family accounts, those privileges will be revoked immediately. This decision would have immediate consequences for Jack. I realized that I had co-signed on several family accounts as a favor to help Jack establish credit after some financial difficulties in his 20s. My fraud report would trigger automatic reviews of all these accounts. Michael also informed me about something I hadn't considered. When we investigate identity theft, we're required to report our findings to law enforcement if the evidence suggests criminal activity. Based on what you've described, this could result in criminal charges. As I ended the call with my bank, I realized that Jack was about to face consequences far beyond missing a cruise vacation. His systematic theft and fraud had crossed multiple legal lines, and the evidence I had gathered would support criminal prosecution. But the most satisfying part was yet to come. I had one final call to make, one that would cap off my morning of systematic revenge. I contacted Royal Caribbean's guest services and used my refund from Norwegian to book a solo luxury cruise on a different ship. "We have availability on Harmony of the Seas departing this afternoon," the representative said. "It's the same 7-day Western Caribbean itinerary you were originally planning." Using my refund money and my excellent credit rating, I upgraded to a Crown Loft suite, a seat with a private balcony concierge service and priority boarding. The cost was actually less than what I had originally spent on 4 cabins with Norwegian, leaving me with extra money for onboard expenses. "Your suite is confirmed, Mr. Byron. Your boarding time is 2 p.m. this afternoon. Will you need assistance with any dining or entertainment reservations?" I booked every luxury experience I wanted: primetime dining at Giovanni's table, VIP seating for the Broadway-style shows, a private cabana at Perfect Day at Coco Cay. Everything that Jack had tried to steal from me, I was going to experience in even better style. As I hung up the phone, I looked around my apartment at the evidence of Jack's betrayal spread across my dining room table. Bank statements, email, printouts, screenshots, and travel documents told the story of months of systematic manipulation and theft. But instead of being his victim, I was about to board a luxury cruise ship and enjoy the vacation I had earned. And Jack was about to wake up to discover that his elaborate scheme had not only failed, but had triggered criminal investigations and industry-wide fraud alerts. The morning of what was supposed to be my family cruise had become the morning I finally stood up for myself. And it felt incredible. My phone started buzzing at 8:30 a.m. and it didn't stop for the next 3 hours. The first call was from Mom, her voice high and panicked. "Talking, Byron. What did you do?" "Norwegian Cruise Line just called saying our entire booking was canceled due to fraudulent activity. They said someone tried to steal your reservation. This is insane." Mom's voice escalated to near screaming as she continued. "How could you be so vindictive, so selfish? We're supposed to leave in 6 hours. Jack is here crying because Amber is devastated. You've ruined everything over some petty jealousy." I stayed calm, something that seemed to infuriate her more. "Mom, I didn't cancel the cruise out of spite. I canceled it because Jack committed fraud by trying to steal my booking authorization and by making unauthorized charges to my credit card." "That's ridiculous. Jack would never do that." "He's been trying to help coordinate this trip for months. You're just angry because we asked you to give up your cabin for someone who really needs it." Mom's version of reality was so distorted that I almost felt sorry for her. Jack had manipulated her so thoroughly that she couldn't see the truth, even when it was directly in front of her. "Mom, Jack has been stealing from me for months. He added over $2,000 in unauthorized charges to the booking. He tried to take control of my reservation by lying to the cruise line about my mental health. This isn't about giving up a cabin. It's about him committing multiple crimes." But Mom wasn't listening. She hung up on me after threatening to cut me off forever if I didn't fix this immediately. 20 minutes later, Jack called. His voice was different from Mom's panic. It was pure rage, mixed with desperation. "You piece of garbage, you canceled everything. After all I did to help plan this trip, you're going to destroy the whole family over this." Jack's threats quickly turned ugly. He promised to beat the hell out of me if I didn't call the cruise line and restore the bookings. He accused me of being a psycho who was ruining everyone's lives out of spite. But then something interesting happened. As Jack continued his rant, his voice began to crack. The false bravado started crumbling when I calmly mentioned that I knew about his unauthorized charges, his attempts to steal my frequent flyer miles, and his recorded calls to various companies. "I don't know what you think you know, but you can't prove anything," Jack said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Jack, I have screenshots of all your unauthorized charges. I have recorded calls from the cruise line about your fraud attempts. I have evidence of you using my credit cards without permission, and I've reported all of it to the police." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for almost 30 seconds. When Jack finally spoke, his voice was small and pleading. "Byron, come on, man. We're family. I was just trying to help Amber out. She really is pregnant and she needs this trip. Can't we work something out? I'll pay you back for everything, I promise." The transformation from angry threats to desperate begging was almost complete. But I wasn't finished revealing what I knew. "Jack, I also know about your dating profiles where you brag about taking luxury vacations you don't pay for. I know about the multiple women you've promised this same cruise to, and I know Amber was drinking wine yesterday, which suggests she's either lying about being pregnant or being incredibly irresponsible with a pregnancy." Another long silence. Then Jack hung up without another word. The third call came from Dad at 9:45 a.m. His voice was confused and deeply hurt. "Son, I don't understand what's happening. Your mother is hysterical. Jack is talking about lawyers, and nobody will explain to me what's really going on. I thought we were all going on this cruise together as a family." This conversation was the hardest one. Dad genuinely had no idea what had been happening behind the scenes. As I explained Jack's manipulation and theft, I could hear Dad's shock and disbelief. "Jack has been intercepting communications between us for months," I told him. "He's been deleting my emails and replacing them with messages that made me look bad. He's been manipulating Mom against me while stealing money from my accounts." This was never about giving up a cabin, Dad. This was about Jack orchestrating an elaborate scheme to steal my vacation while destroying my relationships with you and Mom. Dad was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was shaky. "Byron, I had no idea. I thought you were being difficult about trip planning. Jack told us you were trying to control every detail and that you were making demands about who could come. I never knew you were being so generous with paying for everything. Dad, I planned this cruise as a gift to celebrate my promotion. I wanted to share my success with my family. Instead, Jack has been systematically stealing from me while convincing you and Mom that I'm the problem." I heard Dad talking to someone in the background, probably Mom. There seemed to be an argument happening on his end of the line. "Byron, your mother is saying that Jack has been protecting us from your controlling behavior. But what you're telling me doesn't match up with what I've been hearing. I'm very confused." I realized that Dad needed to see the evidence for himself. "Dad, I'm going to email you screenshots of the unauthorized charges, copies of the manipulated communications and recordings of Jack's fraud attempts. You can review everything and make your own decision about what's really been happening." As I was about to end the call with Dad, I heard shouting in the background. A female voice was screaming, and it wasn't Mom. "Is that Amber?" I asked. "Yes, she just arrived, and she's very upset about the cruise being canceled. She's yelling at your mother about ruining her vacation. This whole house has gone crazy, Byron." The fourth call came from an unexpected source. Sarah, my ex-fiancée, called at 10:15 a.m. "Byron, I hope it's okay that I'm calling. Jack reached out to me this morning asking if I knew how to contact you. He seemed really upset about some kind of family emergency." This was interesting. Why was Jack involving Sarah in family drama? "Sarah, what exactly did Jack tell you?" "He said you had canceled a family cruise out of spite and that everyone was devastated. He asked if I thought you might listen to me about reconsidering. He seemed to think that maybe if I talked to you, you might change your mind." I realized this was another layer of Jack's manipulation. He was trying to use my painful breakup with Sarah as leverage, hoping that her involvement would make me more emotionally vulnerable and likely to give in. Sarah, did Jack ever contact you before today? Actually, yes. A few months ago, right after our breakup, he reached out asking if I was okay. He suggested that maybe we should try to work things out, that you were really struggling without me. At the time, I thought he was being sweet looking out for his brother. The picture became even clearer. Jack had been trying to manipulate my romantic relationships as well as my family relationships. He had probably hoped that reconciling with Sarah would give him additional leverage over my emotions and my money. Sarah Jack has been systematically stealing from me and manipulating my family. His call to you this morning was part of that manipulation. He's hoping to use our past relationship to pressure me into allowing him to continue stealing from me. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Byron, that's really disturbing. I'm sorry I ever engaged with his attempts to get us back together. I had no idea he was manipulating the situation for his own benefit. The final call of the morning came from someone I hadn't expected to hear from. Detective Rodriguez from the local police fraud division called at 11:30 a.m. Mr. Byron, we've received multiple fraud reports this morning involving your name and identity. We'd like to schedule an interview to discuss the situation and review the evidence you've gathered. I explained that I could come in after I returned from my cruise the following week. Detective Rodriguez seemed surprised. You're still going on the cruise? Yes, I booked a solo cruise on a different ship. I'm not letting my brother's criminal behavior ruin my vacation. Detective Rodriguez chuckled. Good for you, Mr. Byron. Based on the preliminary reports we've received, it looks like your brother has been very busy. Identity theft, credit card fraud, and attempted booking fraud across multiple companies. We'll have plenty to discuss when you get back. As I packed my bags for the real cruise, I reflected on the morning's phone calls. Jack's manipulation had been so thorough that it took a crisis for the truth to come to light. Mom was still defending him despite overwhelming evidence of his crimes. Dad was beginning to see the reality, but was struggling to reconcile it with months of Jack's lies. And Jack himself had gone from arrogant threats to desperate pleading as he realized the consequences of his actions. But perhaps most satisfying was realizing that Jack's scheme had not only failed, but had exposed him to criminal prosecution and destroyed his credibility with the family. His attempt to steal my vacation had resulted in him losing far more than he had tried to gain. At 12:30 p.m., I loaded my luggage into my car and headed for the port. Behind me, I left a family in chaos, dealing with the consequences of enabling and participating in Jack's manipulation. Ahead of me was a luxury cruise suite and 7 days of relaxation that I had truly earned. For the first time in months, I felt genuinely happy and proud of myself. I had stood up to abuse documented crimes and refused to be a victim. And I was about to enjoy the vacation of a lifetime while Jack faced the legal consequences of his actions. I decided to make one final stop before heading to the port. The chaos I had left behind needed to be addressed face to face, and I wanted to see Jack's reaction when confronted with the full evidence of his crimes. When I arrived at my parents' house at 1 p.m., the scene was even more chaotic than I had imagined. 2 police cars were parked outside, and I could hear shouting from inside the house. I grabbed my folder of evidence and walked through the front door without knocking. The living room looked like a crime scene investigation. Detective Rodriguez and Officer Martinez were interviewing Jack at the dining room table, while Amber paced frantically near the kitchen, talking rapidly on her phone. Mom sat on the couch crying while Dad stood by the window looking completely lost. Jack looked up when I entered, and his face went through a range of emotions. Surprise, fear, anger, and finally defeat. He looked smaller, somehow diminished by the reality of being caught. Byron. Detective Rodriguez greeted me. Perfect timing. We're just going over Mr. Thompson's version of events. He claims this is all a misunderstanding and that you gave him permission to make charges and access your accounts. I handed Detective Rodriguez my evidence folder. Everything is documented in here. Screenshots of unauthorized charges, emails showing systematic manipulation, recorded calls from companies about his fraud attempts, and evidence of him intercepting family communications. Jack's lawyer apparently called during the morning chaos, looked through the evidence with growing concern. After 10 minutes of review, he whispered something to Jack that made Jack's shoulders slump in defeat. Detective Rodriguez, the lawyer said, "My client would like to discuss a plea arrangement." But the real drama was happening across the room. Amber was on the phone with someone, and her conversation was loud enough for everyone to hear. "No, Marcus, the cruise is canceled. Yes, I know I promised you could come. No, I can't just book another one because the money guy found out about everything." She hung up and immediately dialed another number. "Jessica, yeah, the whole thing fell through. No, Jack can't just pay for it himself. He doesn't actually have money. It was all his brother's money." The truth about Amber was becoming clear. She had been using Jack just as much as Jack had been using me. The pregnancy claim was obviously false, and she had apparently been promising multiple people they could join her on the stolen vacation. Dad finally found his voice. "Jack, is all of this true? Did you really steal from your brother?" Jack looked around the room at the evidence spread across the table, the police officers taking notes, and his lawyer shaking his head. The facade he had maintained for months finally crumbled. "I just wanted something nice for once," Jack said quietly. "Byron always gets everything. The good job, the nice apartment, the money for vacations. I work just as hard, but I never get to have nice things." "So you decided to steal them?" Dad said, his voice heavy with disappointment. "It wasn't supposed to be stealing. I thought Byron would just accept it and move on. He always does. He never fights back when the family asks him for things." Mom looked up from the couch, her face streaked with tears. "Jack, how could you make me send that text to Byron? How could you make me hurt my own son?" This was the moment I had been waiting for. Mom was finally seeing through Jack's manipulation. "Mom, look at these emails," I said, showing her the folder. "Jack has been deleting my messages to you and replacing them with fake ones. He's been making me look selfish and controlling while positioning himself as the grateful son. Everything you thought you knew about my behavior over the past few months was lies." Mom read through the evidence with growing horror. Email after email showed Jack's systematic campaign to poison her against me. Messages where I had tried to coordinate family activities were deleted and replaced with Jack's versions that made me look demanding and difficult. "Oh God, Byron," Mom whispered. "What have I done? I sent you that horrible text because I thought you were being selfish about the trip. Jack told me you were trying to control who could come and that you were making unreasonable demands." Dad came over and looked at the emails over Mom's shoulder. His face went through the same transformation as he realized the extent of Jack's manipulation. "Son," Dad said to me, "I owe you an enormous apology. We've been treating you terribly based on Jack's lies." But the revelations weren't over. Detective Rodriguez had been reviewing Jack's phone and computer with a warrant obtained earlier that morning. What he found was even more damning than what I had already discovered. "Mr. Byron, your brother, has been running multiple schemes targeting different family members and romantic partners. We found evidence of him stealing from your parents' accounts as well, using similar methods." This was news to everyone in the room. Detective Rodriguez explained that Jack had been using his access to family accounts to make small, regular transfers to his personal account, disguising them as legitimate expenses. "He's stolen approximately $4,000 from your parents over the past 8 months. Detective Rodriguez continued. "Small amounts that wouldn't be noticed individually, but significant when added together." Dad's face turned red with anger. "Jack, you've been stealing from us too." "It wasn't stealing," Jack protested weakly. "I was just borrowing money for expenses. I was going to pay it back." "When?" Dad demanded. "When were you going to pay back money you took without permission?" Officer Martinez had been reviewing Amber's social media during the interviews. "Ma'am, we found some concerning posts on your accounts. You've been advertising this cruise to multiple people selling spots on the trip that you didn't actually have the right to offer." Amber stopped pacing, and stared at the officer. "What do you mean? You charged 3 different people money for joining you on the cruise? Collecting over $800 in payments for a trip you knew was funded by stolen money." This was getting better and better. Amber hadn't just been Jack's accomplice. She had been running her own scam using his stolen vacation. But Detective Rodriguez had saved the most interesting discovery for last. "Mr. Byron, we also found evidence that your brother has been planning to steal your identity more systematically. He had applications prepared for credit cards in your name loan documents, with forged signatures, and even a fake power of attorney, giving him access to your financial accounts." The room went completely silent. Jack had been planning to essentially take over my entire financial life, not just steal a vacation. "This goes far beyond credit card fraud," Detective Rodriguez continued. "This is systematic identity theft and financial abuse with clear intent to cause significant harm. Mr. Thompson is looking at multiple felony charges." Jack's lawyer spoke up again. "Detective, my client is prepared to make full restitution and accept responsibility for his actions. We'd like to discuss alternatives to prosecution." "That's not my decision," Detective Rodriguez replied. "Mr. Byron is the victim here. It's his choice whether to pursue full prosecution or accept a plea arrangement." All eyes turned to me. Jack looked up from the table with desperate hope in his eyes. Mom and Dad waited to see how forgiving I would be. Amber continued pacing, probably calculating how quickly she could distance herself from Jack. I looked around the room at the wreckage of my family relationships caused by Jack's greed and manipulation. I thought about months of being made to feel selfish for my success, months of having my generosity exploited and my character questioned. "Detective Rodriguez, I want to pursue full prosecution. Jack needs to face the complete legal consequences of his actions. But I'm also willing to work with his lawyer on restitution arrangements." Jack's face fell, but Dad nodded approvingly. "That's fair, Byron. Jack needs to be held accountable for what he's done." Mom was still crying, but she managed to speak. "Byron, I'm so sorry. I don't know how to make up for the things I said to you for believing Jack's lies about you." "Mom, you can start by getting counseling to understand how you were manipulated," I said gently. "Jack is very skilled at psychological manipulation. You're not the first person to fall for his tactics." As the police finished their interviews and prepared to take Jack into custody, I made my final announcement. "I want everyone to know that I'm still going on the cruise. I booked a solo trip on Royal Caribbean leaving this afternoon. I'm not letting Jack's crimes ruin my vacation." Dad smiled for the first time all day. "Good for you, son. You deserve that vacation more than anyone." Even Detective Rodriguez seemed impressed. "Mr. Byron, I have to say your documentation of these crimes was excellent. Your evidence folder made our investigation much easier. You handled this situation perfectly." As I prepared to leave for the port, Jack was placed in handcuffs and read his rights. Amber had quietly slipped out the back door, apparently deciding that loyalty to Jack wasn't worth potential criminal charges. Mom and Dad walked me to my car, both looking exhausted, but relieved that the truth was finally out. "Byron," Mom said, "when you get back from your cruise, we need to have a long talk about how to rebuild our relationship. I have a lot to apologize for." "I'd like that, Mom, but things are going to be different. I'm not going to be the family doormat anymore." Dad shook my hand firmly. "You shouldn't have to be. What you did today took real courage. I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself." As I drove toward the cruise port, I felt a mixture of sadness and satisfaction. My family was broken, but it was broken by truth rather than lies. Jack was facing justice for his crimes, and I was about to embark on the luxury vacation I had earned through hard work and careful planning. For the first time in years, I felt truly free from the burden of managing everyone else's emotions and expectations. I was going to enjoy my cruise, and when I returned, I would start building healthier relationships based on honesty and mutual respect rather than manipulation and guilt. 6 hours later, I stood on the private balcony of my Crown Loft suite aboard Royal Caribbean's Harmony of the Seas, watching the Florida coastline disappear into the distance. The irony wasn't lost on me. While Jack sat in a county jail cell awaiting arraignment, I was beginning the most luxurious vacation of my life. My suite was everything I had dreamed of and more. Floor-to-ceiling windows provided panoramic ocean views, while elegant furnishings and marble accents created an atmosphere of refined comfort. The private balcony featured comfortable seating and a dining table where I could enjoy room service meals while watching the endless blue water. As the ship sailed toward our first destination, I received updates about the chaos I had left behind. Dad texted that Jack had been formally charged with identity theft, credit card fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy. The multiple jurisdictions involved meant he was facing both state and federal charges, with potential prison time of up to 7 years if convicted on all counts. But more importantly, Dad shared news about family healing. Your mother started counseling today. Dr. Peterson specializes in family manipulation and psychological abuse. She wants to understand how she was fooled so completely and how to avoid it in the future. Over the 7 days that followed, I experienced the Caribbean vacation I had originally planned, but in ways I never could have imagined. Without the stress of managing family dynamics or worrying about everyone else's comfort, I was free to simply enjoy myself. I spent my first morning at sea in the Mandara Spa, enjoying the couple's massage package that Jack had fraudulently booked for himself and Amber. The irony was delicious. I experienced the romantic spa treatment as a celebration of my independence and self-respect. At Giovanni's table that evening, I dined alone but felt more content than I had in months. The executive chef, learning about my solo celebration cruise, sent complimentary wine pairings with each course and even stopped by my table to discuss the menu preparations. But the most meaningful part of my cruise came through an unexpected friendship. At the Solo Travelers Mixer on the second night, I met Catherine Morrison, a retired high school teacher from Denver. Catherine had booked her first solo cruise after her husband's death 6 months earlier. I spent 43 years putting everyone else's needs before my own, Catherine told me over dinner at the specialty steakhouse. After Harold passed, I realized I didn't even know what I enjoyed anymore. This cruise is my journey back to myself. Catherine became an informal mentor during our week together. She had survived family manipulation similar to what I had experienced, but from her late husband's relatives who tried to control her after his death. Byron, the hardest thing to learn is that protecting yourself isn't selfish, she said as we watched the sunset from the ship's observation deck. When you enable someone's destructive behavior by absorbing the consequences, you're not helping them, you're making it worse. Catherine helped me understand that my years of being the family rescuer had actually enabled Jack's parasitic behavior. By consistently absorbing the financial and emotional costs of family conflicts, I had trained everyone to see me as an unlimited resource rather than a person with my own needs and boundaries. Real love sometimes means letting people face the consequences of their choices, Catherine explained. If you had continued enabling Jack's behavior, he might have progressed to more serious crimes. You actually saved him from a worse future by stopping him now. Our conversations continued throughout the week as we explored Cozumel's ancient Mayan ruins, snorkeled in Jamaica's crystal-clear waters, and relaxed on the private beach at Perfect Day at Coco Cay. Catherine's wisdom helped me process not just Jack's betrayal, but years of unhealthy family dynamics that I had normalized. During our shore excursion to Chichen Itza, Catherine shared something that changed my perspective entirely. Byron, I've been watching you this week, and I see someone who's naturally generous and kind. Those are beautiful qualities. Don't let Jack's abuse of your kindness make you cynical or closed off. The goal isn't to become selfish. It's to become wise about how you share your generosity. By the cruise's midpoint, I was receiving regular updates from Detective Rodriguez about Jack's case. The evidence I had provided led to additional discoveries of fraud and theft. Jack's elaborate schemes had victimized not just our family, but former girlfriends, co-workers, and even his landlord. Wow, your brother was running what amounts to a small-scale criminal enterprise, Detective Rodriguez texted. Multiple victims have come forward since his arrest. You probably saved other families from experiencing what you went through. But perhaps the most satisfying update came from Norwegian Cruise Line's fraud department. Jack had been placed on their permanent ban list along with several other major cruise companies that shared security information. His attempts to steal my vacation had resulted in him being blacklisted from the travel industry. The family updates were more complicated, but ultimately hopeful. Mom was making real progress in counseling, learning to recognize the manipulation tactics that Jack had used against her. She sent a heartfelt email apologizing not just for the cruise incident, but for years of expecting me to absorb family problems without supporting me in return. I realize now that I was so afraid of conflict with Jack that I always took the path of least resistance, which meant pressuring you to give in because you were more reasonable, she wrote. That was unfair and harmful. I want to learn how to be a better mother to both of my sons. Dad had taken a more active role in family financial management, discovering additional evidence of Jack's theft and manipulation. He was working with attorneys to recover stolen money and establish legal protections against future fraud. Most surprisingly, Dad had also begun attending therapy sessions with Mom. We enabled Jack's behavior for years, and we need to understand how and why, he explained in a phone call. We want to rebuild our relationship with you on a healthier foundation. On our final night at sea, Catherine and I attended the ship's formal night dinner together. She looked elegant in a navy blue dress while I wore the new tuxedo I had purchased specifically for this cruise. Byron, I want to tell you something, Catherine said as we enjoyed dessert on my private balcony. Watching you this week has been inspiring. You handled an incredibly difficult situation with grace and wisdom. You documented crimes, protected yourself legally, and refused to be a victim. But you did it all without becoming bitter or cruel. She paused to look out at the stars, reflecting on the calm Caribbean water. That takes real character. Jack thought your kindness was weakness, but he was wrong. True strength is being able to protect yourself while maintaining your compassion for others. As our cruise ended and we prepared to disembark in Fort Lauderdale, Catherine and I exchanged contact information and promised to stay in touch. She was returning to Denver to start volunteering with organizations that help seniors avoid financial abuse. You gave me the courage to turn my experience into something helpful for others, she told me. Maybe someday you'll do something similar. The drive home from the port gave me time to reflect on the week's experiences and the larger lessons I had learned. Jack's betrayal had been devastating, but it had also freed me from years of unhealthy family dynamics and self-sacrifice that wasn't actually helping anyone. I returned to a family that was broken but healing. Jack had accepted a plea agreement that included 3 years of supervised probation, full restitution to all victims, and mandatory psychological counseling. He would avoid prison time, but he would spend years rebuilding his life and reputation. More importantly, I returned to parents who were actively working to understand and change the dynamics that had enabled Jack's behavior. They were learning to see me as an individual with my own needs and boundaries, rather than as the family's unlimited emotional and financial resource. 6 months later, I hosted Thanksgiving dinner in my apartment for the first time. It was a small gathering, just Mom, Dad, and myself. Jack was spending the holiday in a halfway house working on his recovery and making restitution payments. Byron, I want to thank you, Dad said as we shared the meal I had prepared. What you did last spring saved our family. It was painful at the time, but it was necessary. Mom nodded tearfully. I'm proud of the man you've become. You found a way to protect yourself while still leaving room for healing and forgiveness. That takes wisdom beyond your years. As I looked around my table at our small but honest family gathering, I realized that losing Jack's presence had actually strengthened my relationships with my parents. We were building something new based on truth and mutual respect rather than manipulation and guilt. I had learned the most important lesson of my adult life. Protecting yourself from people who abuse your kindness isn't selfish. It's necessary for healthy relationships. Real family supports your success instead of punishing it. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let people face the consequences of their choices instead of rescuing them from reality. The cruise that Jack tried to steal from me had become the catalyst for the most important personal growth of my life. I discovered that I could be both kind and strong, generous and wise, loving and protected. Jack had taught me these lessons through his betrayal, though certainly not in the way he had intended. Today, I maintain healthy boundaries with family while remaining open to genuine relationships. I've learned to distinguish between people who appreciate my generosity and those who exploit it. Most importantly, I've learned that taking care of myself isn't selfish. It's essential for being able to genuinely care for others. My cruise cabin may have been stolen, but I gained something far more valuable: self-respect, healthy boundaries, and the knowledge that I could protect myself while maintaining my capacity for love and forgiveness. Have you ever had to choose between keeping peace in your family and protecting yourself from being taken advantage of? How did you handle the situation, and what did you learn from it? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe for more stories about overcoming family challenges and finding the strength to stand up for yourself. Share this with anyone who might be struggling with similar situations. Sometimes knowing we're not alone makes all the difference. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember, your kindness is a gift, but it should never come at the cost of your own well-being. Take care of yourselves and never be afraid to set boundaries that protect your peace and happiness.